This episode of Manage Smarter is presented by Sales Fuel Coach, our adaptive sales coaching featuring 5-minute quick coaching personalized to each sales rep. Learn more about Sales Fuel Coach at salesfuel.com. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast with hosts C. Lee Smith and Audrey Strong. We're glad you're here for discussions on new ways to manage smarter, hire, develop and retain talent, improve results, and propel team performance to new heights. This is the Manage Smarter podcast.
What does it mean to be a hero? And even more importantly, what does it mean to be a hero leader? It's a specific type of combination, and we have a guest here that's going to tell us what that combination is. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Manage Smarter podcast. I'm Audrey Strong. I'm the Vice President of Communications here at Sales Fuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the President CEO of Sales Fuel and a proud Hero Club member.
There you go. So you're a hero, and we are proud to welcome back to the show the Chairman and CEO of the C-Suite Network and best-selling author of The Hero Factor, How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures. And we're proud to call him a friend and also a colleague through Tallgrass Public Relations. Jeffrey Hayzlett, thank you for giving us some of your time today.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And you guys are absolutely tops in our books because you're on C-Suite Radio too. So we love that. I mean, we're now hitting 100 podcasts. Over 5,000 episodes every single year, so it's amazing.
Are we still in the top 5?
You are. You guys pop up there at the top. You've been staying.
I love it.
Been knocking people down. They try to get up to you there, Lee, and boom, you just.
Well, that's only because you haven't been in the studio recording your own podcast lately. Because I'm sure when that happens, we're going to get knocked down.
Yeah, we'll get right down to the bottom.
There's lots of room for great podcasters, so that's what's really cool. You know, we're the world's largest business podcast network, so it's just fantastic to watch.
That is fantastic.
And you guys are part of it. Every month, we have like 250% growth over last month. It's amazing.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So Jeffrey, how would you define what a hero is?
Yeah. Well, it's somebody obviously with a cape, moves tall buildings, and a single bound, but
And fights crime.
And fights crime. In a business sense, it's someone who runs a hero culture, that runs a business that's really focused in on some key items. We find that companies that are hero companies, they actually gross more revenue, make more money, have happier, engaged employees, they have more engaged customers, and they have vendors who like to work with them. So, a hero is somebody who just takes care of other people.
But it's a choice.
Oh, it's a big choice. You have to make
plus profits.
Yeah.
So you weren't early in your career. You said I was doing fine and I wasn't doing anything wrong. Actually, let me rephrase that. You said you were doing well and you weren't doing anything wrong. Therefore, you weren't as aware of the importance of making that choice.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with making wealth. I mean, let's put that right up there, because you can be on page 12 of the book, The Hero Factor. And by the way, you can go and get a free assessment on the Hero Factor book.com. You can get a free assessment. Don't charge anything. Won't be haunting you or tracking you down. It's all free. We want you to have it because we're on a mission to make businesses better. And I talk about wealth on page 12. I actually talk about the hero intensity chart, where we actually put up different kinds of companies, because on the one side, on the far right side, you got this high hero intensity, the hero that hero factor. And then on the left-hand side, you got operational excellence, which also plays in that hero factor. So where you see businesses that have high operational excellence but low hero intensity, well, those are operational excellence companies. They're great companies. It's like Walmart. That's like, GE. Very good companies, but they're not really participating as heroes. They're not really taking care of the community, looking out after all the things. Now, don't get me wrong. They do a good job. They're not breaking the law. They're not doing those things. But their primary purpose is to really benefit the shareholders. In the bottom right-hand corner, you've got those companies, which I call do-gooders. I mean, they're out there, just really fighting the fight, doing good for others, but they don't make money. They can't fight their way to have a wet paper sack when it comes to money. Well, that doesn't do you any good, because that won't give you the kind of money you want to be able to do the kind of good things that you have, that you believe in. And so, we find that our Hero Club members, those businesses that really have that hero factor, that upper right-hand quadrant, they live values every day, and they stated values. They have stated values about taking care of the community. They take care of their employees. They take care of their customers. They take care of their, vendors. and they take care of the community that they serve and the environment that they live in every single day because it's their backyard. You know, and then there's some other companies, like good companies. We have lots of good companies out there, but they're not hero companies. They don't go that extra mile. And then you've also got, you know, wannabes, you know, that are really trying to do a little bit of both, but can't quite get there. And then you, of course, way in the far left-hand quadrant with low operational excellence and low hero values of those asset companies. And we've seen a few of those, and I write about those in the book. So, you know, what you have to do, and I think what you said, Audrey, you have to pick a side. You have to make a choice. And I say that in the book. I don't care where you're at. Just pick one. Pick one. Pick one of those companies. Decide you're going to be a good co. Decide you're going to be an asshat. I don't care. I'm fine with that. I just won't, you know, do business with you. I won't like you. You know, I basically want to punch you in the throat. You know, but you can be that kind of company. That's what you want to be. But the key is to make a choice about it.
What was your epiphany? I mean, what happened when that made you decide, hey, you know, I'm not just going to be someone who's going to make a lot of money and be very successful in my career or whatever, but I need to make a change so that I put more focus, more emphasis on these other things. What happened?
Well, I was in a big corporate job, and we had just laid off a lot of people, and someone tried to incentivize me for that. And I said, no, that doesn't seem right. We just ruined people's lives. It wasn't our fault. I mean, we had to do what we had to do because that's what you got to do. I mean, we're sometimes forced by those things. Here we were in 2008, and yet someone was trying to incentivize me for laying people off. I said, this isn't right. You're going to give me a check for, I don't know, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, what is it? And it was all because I cut jobs. Wait a second, that doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah, you don't want to profit from other people's pain.
Exactly. So I didn't think that was correct. I won't tell you what the conversations were like, but they weren't pretty. They weren't pleasant. But that's when I decided, look, I don't operate that way. And that's not what good people do. And so as I got out of that and got back into my own businesses and doing my own thing, I started to realize that there was more to it than just making money. There was more to it. You could do it with a conscience. You could do it with values. And I thought, man, I got to go find other people like that. And I was lucky enough to find, the founder of the Hero Club, and I was lucky enough to be able to acquire it. And then I'm lucky enough to be able to grow it now and find other people who want to have stated values. And a difference in what we did in the Hero Club is we make people sign a pledge. I don't care whether you join us or not. Sign a pledge. Sign a pledge.
Take a side.
Pick a side, brother. Pick a side and decide that you're just going to be a good company. Even if you don't, come into our group, I want you to do that. And so I talk about that in the book. I talk about diversity. I talk about inclusion. I talk about, even things like Donald Trump are good for this country right now. Not because of Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong. Okay. I think he's kind of batshit crazy, but because it's forcing people to pick a side,
Some people would call that being divisive, though.
Well, I tend to look on the positive side of it. It's divisive because we didn't do our job to stop him before he got elected. So, which we were complacent. We were letting things go. We said,
there's no way he's going to win.
Exactly. So, and yet, it's because we weren't writing enough checks. We weren't doing enough volunteering. We weren't being vocal. We weren't picking sides to say what's good and bad. And so we got what we got. Okay, now let's don't do that again. Okay? I think most of us would say that. And even those people who were supporters of him would say, hey, there's a better way of doing it.
Or there's got to be a better way.
Well, there should be. There should be.
Hey, we had a little prop bet before you rang into the room, Jeff. We occasionally do this. We bet for Starbucks. It's not money. But I actually thought maybe in terms of age groups of young C-suiters would be less likely to have made this choice, and that Lee said yes. He thinks that the older you get, the more woke you get to this philosophy of becoming a hero leader.
That term, Audrey. Yeah,
and that he thinks that the demographics of who actually embodies this are the older C-suiters.
And not
Do you
old.
Find that?
But but not Gen Zs.
How does it skew?
It's actually, we skew on the hero side right now a little younger than older.
Oh, I won. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think that's an aspirational side.
Yes.
Than an implementation side.
But they're hungrier when they're younger, and they feel more pressure.
Or more idealistic, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think that, again, I think the word I would use is aspirational.
Okay.
Meaning, I think you always want to do the right things, right? And sometimes we got into businesses, and there were phases in the business, or phases in our decades here, that we always couldn't do it because we got so caught up in the rat race. And then as we get a little older, I think Lee's exactly right. We get a little smarter. We get a little bit more thinking about what's my legacy, or our company's legacy. It's like I sent a note on to the team today because I got irritated about we got to do things the right way, and we're not doing it. But we have a choice. We can do it. We can do it this way. Why are we settling for this? Why are we settling for less? I don't get it. I don't want people. And I said so here's the deal. From now on, I was talking about sales, by the way, which is just right down your alley.
Right down my alley. Yep.
Yeah, I said either get on the bus and start driving the bus with me, or take some shifts, or get off the bus, or go stand in front of the bus because I'm going to run you over. Okay? And I said, those are your choices, because if you don't get off the bus or on the bus, I am going to put you in front of the bus, and I'm going to run you over.
So what's interesting about that, though, is it tells me then to be a hero. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to be namby-pamby and flowery and everything all is right with the world, and we have to be positive and rainbows and unicorns and everything like that all the time.
Lee, do I sound like a hugger to you? I mean,
well,
I am a nice guy. You know what I mean? I am.
Yeah, you are a nice guy. It's like, you have this public persona or whatever, but you're a bit of a hard ass. But I know you're really not a hard ass. So.
I think most of the biggest hard asses we know aren't the biggest hard asses we know,
mm-hmm.
right? The biggest tough guys we've had in our lives, like let's think about our fathers or our uncles, or even maybe our grandfathers, a little crusty from time to time, but really with the man, they melt you, and you melt them in a heartbeat. So I think most real leaders are like that. They do what they have to do, but at the soft undercore, they have that other side, because I don't think you have one side when it comes to that stuff.
So if you are a leader that embraces this philosophy and is making the choice, and you are now within an organization that is not this culture, should you start looking around?
Oh, in a heartbeat. You want to have people drinking the Kool-Aid, drinking the champagne or on the wagon. 50-some% of employees, I think it's 58%, are disengaged from the business. And that's freaking nuts. I mean, that's nuts. So, if I want you to be so engaged, I want you to be like me. I want to go to bed at night, hurry up and sleep so I can get up in the morning the next day and go to work. I want you to be that passionate about what we do and how we do it. Now, I don't expect you to be as passionate as me. I would hope that, but I just don't expect it. Because, when you're running the business as an entrepreneur, an entrepreneurial spirit, listen, your wife has to run up to you and say, hey, we're going out tonight on date night, and you can't wear anything with a logo on it. Okay. So because you wear your stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I love doing that. But if I can't find people who are as passionate, but if you're running a hero culture, you're signing up other people just like you, and you're training them and inspiring. Now, typically an entrepreneurial business has 3 stages. The first stage is one-man band or one-woman band. The next stage is adding devout followers, and the third stage is then getting skilled practitioners. Well, hero business also makes sure not to leave those devout followers behind, right? And that we find roles for them, we find ways that they can still be involved as we go to the business, even though I might have to replace them or might have to change them, might have to move them around, but I'm going to find different ways to be able to utilize them because they were there when nobody else was, and that's part of your culture and part of your spirit. What happens in these bigger operational companies and these operational excellence companies, they forget that. And so then they cut that core out.
And each manager has their own culture. So as a manager, you can have a hero culture, I believe. And it can be very challenging to try to function that hero culture within a company that does not subscribe to those values. I hear you there.
Yeah.
But it's like, just because the organization itself may not necessarily embody everything that is required to be a hero culture doesn't mean that you can't try to make your own hero culture on your own team.
Well, you should. You should always try. I mean, the key is to make sure that, not everybody puts profit over people. And not every business has to do that in order to be successful. So this is about the realization that we can combine people and profits and you can become a hero leader. And you can do what's right for the company, but you can do what's right for the people too. And if you can't, then you can declare there's a breakdown. Then you declare, hey, this isn't in our values. But most of us, as you know, Lee, we don't declare our values. Mm-hmm. You know what? Let me ask you right now, listeners, what is your walk-away value? Think about this. In your business today, what is a value that you have that if a customer, an employee, a vendor, or anyone else that you can think of doesn't have the same value that you'd walk away from? I mean, that's the kind of thinking I want you to have, because then it really gets core. Now, once you start to develop these lists of values, then you start to develop this list of operational principles around the values. And then you got to also have, everybody's got to buy into the vision of it. And you got to state it, and you got to be able to walk around and people feel it, live it, breathe it, drink it. And once you have that, well, that's when you start to exceed and you start to become and move up into the upper right-hand quadrant of becoming a real hero leader.
So you think about what your deal breakers are, and the opposite of those deal breakers is your culture or your values.
It's the values, it's things you run to, right? And I think that's a fundamental. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about those things, right? You know, it's like, you know, like one time I tell you, I was with LeVar Burton and Mark Wolf. He's a producer, television producer, movie producer.
Yeah.
And he's done some really great, Terminator and a bunch of others. He's done some great ones. And so anyway, I was with him and LeVar, and we were speaking. And I rarely do go listen to a lot of other speakers unless I really know them. But I just had met LeVar and Mark backstage in the green room, and I really fell in love with Mark and with LeVar. And since we've become LeVar and I have become very good friends. And they asked, "Would you come and watch my speech?" So I stepped out and I watched the speech. I was sitting in the front row, and one of the slides that they put up was, "We don't work with assholes." Mm-hmm. And I thought, "No, that's a good value." Mm-hmm. Right? And that's just says, you know, we don't do that. You know, like one of my values is starting to be, I don't want drama. I'm done with drama. Mm-hmm. I'm done with drama.
The older I get, the less tolerance I have for it.
Yep.
Exactly. And so I'm like, you know, in some cases I've had to pull a couple of people aside and say, look, when you start becoming more of a problem for me to deal with than the benefits that you have or give, the value that you give, it's not worth it. Go ahead.
We've had Cy Wakeman on the show a couple of times. Have you ever met her?
I absolutely have.
Yeah, you two should be best buds. I mean,
Cy's a talent, a real talent. Yeah.
So, what's the business case, you know, for adopting a hero mentality as opposed to a bottom line, results oriented approach to running a company or a department?
Well, I don't know. One's going to make you more money, and you're going to be happier. You know, so right there, how could you not want to do it? I mean, look at these great companies that have even values that you don't want, that you might not want. Let's take Chick-fil-A. Let's take Kathy Truitt, or Truitt Kathy. I can't remember. I always forget. Has a business called Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A. I love their sandwiches. I don't know about you, but I love their sandwiches. I love those little pickles on them, and I love to eat them. And every time you go to Chick-fil-A, there's a huge line. Okay. Well, but they have two values that might be alarming to some people. One is that they don't open on Sunday. They're not open on Sunday. They think that's a day of rest, and that's a day that you should observe the Lord. And regardless of what your religion is or your beliefs, they're not open on Sundays. Now, the other thing is they don't believe in same-sex marriages, and they've been very vocal about it. But you know what? I choose to overlook that because that's their right to do so. But I still go eat their chicken sandwich. You know? So, and there's a business that has some stated values, stated about how they are. He's upfront about it. Their whole organization's upfront with it. Even people who work in the company might not espouse all the values, but they respect the values and that he and the company have stated. Take another business like Starbucks. I write about that in the book. Now, I like to call Starbucks $4 because it's very expensive. Place, but nonetheless, you know,
or no bucks.
Yeah,
$10.
You get $10, maybe it's $10 by the time you get in there. But you know, here's a company that, you know, when they did that, they had two young men walk into a Philadelphia Starbucks, sit down.
Oh, I remember this.
Yeah.
Remember, you know, African American young men waiting to have an appointment. The manager come over and said, "Are you gonna buy a cup of coffee?" And they said, "We're waiting for me." "No, we're waiting." And they said, "Get out." You know. And of course, if you know anything about Starbucks, Starbucks at its core isn't a coffee shop. They say that their values is their community meeting place, community, their place, a gathering place. And you don't have to, I mean, how many times have you walked into Starbucks and maybe not even bought anything and sat there and done work? Well, yet because of allegedly the color of the skin on these two young gentlemen, they were asked to leave. Now, rather than Starbucks run away from it, what did Starbucks do? They shut down all their operations for a day, and they did mandatory training. There's somebody living their values. And by the way, there's another thing about Starbucks, which I've been on Bloomberg and many other shows to talk about, was in certain states, you can carry weapons. Correct. You can carry weapons right out front, and you can wear them on your hip, or you can actually walk around with an AR-15. And so anyway, one of the things that they do is that these right-wing extremists march on Starbucks and go into Starbucks with their weapons. And of course, what does Starbucks do? They recognize that's what the law says. They recognize that's a local value. It's recognize that's what the communities do, so they honor that. And yet that's opposite of what they really believe.
And I would look at the Philadelphia incident that regardless of the color of the skin, gender, or any other things like that, the fact that they kicked them out without buying, because they didn't buy anything, whatever, is actually runs afoul of the company values. So
without question, without question. So that was, they were being heroes. They were being heroes. And I applaud that.
Well, the book is available on Amazon, and I listened to some of your audio version of it, and you can hear a little snippet on there, but also herofactorbook.com, right? And a free assessment. Twitter at Jeffrey Hayzlett. We're just so pleased to kind of share this philosophy and get the word out, Jeffrey, because it really is a choice, and we want people to, be thoughtful. You don't have to do everything the same way your entire career. There are other ways of doing things.
Okay. Well, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for having me and being a part of this and being a part of C-Suite Radio.
It is our pleasure, Jeffrey, and thank you once again.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and recommend on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more great information at salesfuel.com.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.